Welcome to another episode of Journeys in Entrepreneurship. Today, we have Foluso Phillips, founder and chairman of Phillips Consulting Limited, one of the leading and most trusted business management and consulting firms on the continent. He has over 45 years of experience in financial and cost management, industrial operations management, human capital management, information technology systems implementation, and business management consulting. He is a private sector leader with experience in consulting, advising, guiding, and mentoring organizations in the private and public sectors. He has worked with and advised the government and its many agencies at the national and state levels in his professional capacity as a management consultant. Interviewing him is Rosemond Phil Othiwa, an astute corporate and commercial attorney who has garnered experience in providing legal advisory services, tax and corporate due diligence, as well as compliance to business owners and corporate clients for almost a decade. She is an alumnus of the University of Benin. She practiced as an associate in the law firm of Olatunde Adejuyibe, SAN & Co. before joining the firm of Debo Akonde LLP as a partner. Rosemond is also an alumnus of our program, Justice Entrepreneurship School, JES. Join us as we listen to their journeys in entrepreneurship in the management consulting space.
Hello, my name is Rosemond Phil Othiwa, corporate attorney and partner at Debo Akonde LLP, and I'm excited to welcome you once again to the podcast by Faith Foundation, the Journeys in Entrepreneurship. With me in the studio is none other but the amazing Foluso Phillips, fondly known as FOP, who is the founder and chairman of Phillips Consulting Limited. He's going to be sharing with us his breathtaking insights as well as his experience in the world of business and entrepreneurship. I'm excited to have him with us in the studio. Good day, Mr. Phillips. It's so exciting to have you with us.
I think I'm more excited. You don't believe.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And before this session, it's been incredible just hearing about the amazing work you're doing, not just in Nigeria, but in the continent as well. The first thing that I would love to share with you is that we are very, very, very inspired by your work. Your resilience and track record over several decades has proven to the Nigerian entrepreneur out there that there's truly hope, and we definitely have mentors to look up to in the profession and in the world of business. So thank you very much for your incredible contributions in the ecosystem. Thanks you.
My thanks to you. Really.
So I would always say the greatness of a man is found in their stories, and I'm sure you have them. We would love to hear what your journey was like, your entrepreneurial journey into management consulting. You do so much, and to summarize decades in a minute or two may be hard, but we would love to hear some highlights about your story and what has actually brought you to this very, very defining moment that we're in now. Thank you.
Yes, it's to describe 30 odd years in just a few minutes. It's a tough one. But what I've always said to people, and I think it's a strong foundation, and it's important to note that when I started Phillips Consulting, I was actually joining a whole generation of young entrepreneurs that were doing phenomenal things in the financial services industry, especially even the founder of Faith Foundation, Foladiola, when they started GT Bank. And there's a whole generation of young people that said, okay, we are going to redefine what banking is, what financial services is. Fast track to when the telephone industry came, the GSM. There's a whole generation of young people that did phenomenal things at that time. Fast track to the digital age, a whole generation of you guys doing phenomenal things. So what I'm really saying is that what I did was I plugged in to the ecosystem of what was going on at that time. So they were starting banks, but you just don't run a bank alone. There's a whole sort of stuff that's got to be done, training and recruitment and all those things. So when I set up the consulting firm, I just plugged rode on the back of the phenomenal things that was happening then. So that's how it really started. Okay, that was the foundation for that. But I think for me personally, what has helped to sustain us over these years was I really didn't start a consulting firm. I started an organization that I said I wanted to outlive me. And there's Sir Akintola Williams. Some of you might not know him. He's still alive. He's about 103 years old or something. And I said I want to be like him because he set up Akintola Williams as an accounting firm. And he left the firm and the firm carried on. And I found that so interesting. So I said, yeah, I want to create an organization that would outlive me, that would be there long after I'm gone. So the mindset was different. It wasn't a case of a suitcase carrying consultant and I was doing stuff for myself. I was always about the organization, and everything that I did thereafter was always about how to sustain the organization, how to make sure that it lives on and on and on. And that led on to the whole concept of building an institution. And much later in life, somebody taught me a few lessons about what it means to build an institution. But what I didn't realize was that the thing that we were doing as a firm at that time was how helping organizations and helping people to build institutions. And if I fast forward to the lessons that I would share with a lot of you today that are doing phenomenal things, that please, you've got to learn that it's about building institutions, not just about the things that you're doing. How can we build an institution that would outlive us? Because it's the institutions that you see today that you admire so much all over the world, because somebody made an effort to build that institution. And in the mentoring things that I do, I have a young nephew that's doing stuff and I've warned him and he's obeying that about building an incredible institution. I said, have the mindset, if somebody wants to buy you one day, because all you young people, you're selling your organizations, there's going to be something to buy. Okay, so that guided me a lot in terms of the things that we did. And also the whole idea of running what I call a world-class organization. Okay, one in which, you see, world class is forever moving, it's a moving goalpost. So you're forever improving, continuously getting better and better. So I think those are the foundational things that I had in mind that helped us to then do all the different things, whether it was banking or training or strategy or technology or whatever it is. All those are just activities within a particular foundation. And it's that foundation that I think I would like to stress for a lot of people today to pay attention to. You can do wonderful things, make phenomenal shoes, do wonderful things in agriculture, etc. Those are activities, but they've got to be activities that can be sustainable over time. Okay, so that for me is the summary of 30 years. Literally. Okay.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. And I caught something from what you shared. You talked about the fact, think transgenerationally.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine at that time, it was quite a long time ago, I would say 30 years perhaps. You must have been an outlier, in the context of every other person, because, maybe people were trying to get into different organizations, but you stood out and you were going to bring structure and systems. Did you at any point feel alone in that endeavor? And how were you able to face some of the unique challenges? At that time, there was no technology as we know it today. Yeah. There was no communication, swift, fast communication as we know it today. So how did you grapple with those unique challenges at that time? And how were you able to navigate even as new seasons of technological change came, and met your organization?
Yeah. And I think the book that I just read, it's called The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge. It's an old book, but it was all about creating learning organizations. And because we're a consulting firm, I thought my people, you guys, you need to be on top of your game. So you must learn and learn and learn. And I used to invest a lot of money in buying books, which is the equivalent of your internet today. Okay. And so the starting point again was to try and see how you could build a lot of competence in the people, because the service we offered was all about knowledge. And also I managed to get into this whole concept of total quality management. You guys might not know about it today, but it was a lifesaver. It was our product. Not only did we sell it, we lived it. So the whole concept of building quality management systems, understanding how customers think, understanding that it's all about the customer, understanding that the performance of an organization or how customers see quality is based on their own expectations. And because that tied in also with the banking industry at that time, where you guys might not know it in those days of tally numbers, which would be strange to you, all the digital stuff you do today. But in those days, it was hard work trying to build a lot of efficiency into the banking system. Don't forget, that was what I plugged into. If I had set up Phillips Consulting, maybe 10 years later, would have been into telephony and the GSM. And like I said, even today, anybody that's starting a consulting practice, which is what I tell my guys now, even though I watch them at a distance, is that you got to plug into the digital world because that's what's happening. So for us, it was a case of an outlier, yes, coming and holding on to the concept of quality, which was globally acceptable. It was a new thing. It allowed us to get work with major global organizations. I remember I was invited to have a chat with the guys in Mobile, and Mobile, they were into, being an American company, they were into all these issues about quality systems, management systems, ISO certifications and stuff like that. And I remember chatting to this American gentleman, and the attitude was that, well, we got to use a Nigerian company. What do you know? And I proudly was able to teach him a thing or two. Okay. But that got Phillips into Mobile. And it was very strange that this young consulting firm with a staff strength of about 10, 15, 20 people at that time were able to do phenomenal things at Mobile because we were at the leading edge, at the cutting edge. The concept of total quality management was new. We were at the cutting edge. It's like somebody saying, like I tell my guys now, that AI, I need the firm to be at the cutting edge of AI because people understand it, but how do you use it? How do you get value from it? Okay, so it's the same concept, same theory. So going back again, so being an outlier, I managed to get a product that worked well for me and that gave us a sit on the board, so to speak. But then another thing for us particularly was discovering South Africa. Okay, that's a huge thing in the life of the firm. We just by sheer coincidence, we haven't got time to tell a long story, but we I had an opportunity to go to South Africa with a team of mortgage bank MDs. In those days, there were tons of mortgage banks in Nigeria. And I remember arriving in Johannesburg in 1993, okay, where before the independence in South Africa, and everybody being stunned at what we saw and that, this South Africa we've all been abusing. These guys seem to, at least from an infrastructure point of view, seem to be light years ahead of us. But that started another journey whereby we hooked up with them and we were able to bring the two countries together. I think if you look at it, we must have shifted about, without exaggeration, over 1,000 managers, CEOs. We just going back and forth, and that's why I created a kind of a brand in South Africa. We set up an office in South Africa. But what was more interesting was the fact that we were able to, it opened my eyes to the whole African continent itself and became very, very Africa focused. So I talk a lot about the African Renaissance, and there were so many things that we did. We would talk about leadership in Africa, about entrepreneurship in Africa, and things of that nature. So, it's so funny how one thing just leads to another. And that's where we are today.
Wow, that's amazing. And they will always say that where there's a gap, there's an opportunity.
Yeah.
There was you were able to spot gaps that basically most people wouldn't see, but you saw opportunity in it and you plugged in. It's first to jump into the pool, right? I would love to have a follow-up question to this, which is, you have a multidisciplinary approach which cuts across different aspects, management, like we've mentioned, information management systems, IT, finance. Do you think that experience across those disciplines gave you an edge in terms of service delivery? And how were you able to translate those qualities to even people within your organization? Because you've mentioned about being able to transfer and outlive yourself, right? If an organization is all tied to one person, then it's only a matter of time because humans are finite, right? But when you're able to translate that skill. So 2 questions in one, right? The first is, would you think or would you agree that your multidisciplinary approach, gave you a broader perspective in how you were able to deliver these services? And how have you been able to translate that particular skill to those within your organization to make your work better or easier?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, I studied industrial economics, okay? And it's funny, I ended up studying industrial economics because I was more of an economist, but I needed to have in those days, to get the foreign exchange to pay your fees, you have to study a subject that's not in the country. So instead of picking economics, I chose industrial economics. And, I proved to my father that, look, this is different from economics. Therefore, they should give you permission to get foreign exchange. So in studying industrial economics, it's a combination of manufacturing and industrial stuff with economics and marketing and things of that nature. So that set me on a particular pathway in terms of thinking. So I wasn't thinking as an economist. I was thinking more of a manufacturing type of economist. Then I studied accounting. But then again, I didn't go into a typical chartered accounting type of stuff. What I studied management accounting, cost accounting. So here you have an economist that understands industrial setup and understands costing. It was just a whole range of integrated skills that I had. And then I went, having studied accounting, it's so funny. I joined, in those days, it was British Gas Corporation in the United Kingdom. And we, in the training department, being fresh out of university, studying from accounting, I studied under the computer department.
Really?
I mean, and they just said, where can we put all these trainees? Okay, let's put them under, the IT group. And so we were there. And so in all the budget work we were doing spreadsheets. I'm talking of, many, many years ago, 40 years ago or so. And was way ahead. So here, again, you look at it. So an economist, industrial, cost accountant with IT knowledge. It's just the way things work. And my first job when I left and I qualified was as a systems accountant. And when I came to Nigeria to work with Pfizer, it was to set up their computer department. We were back in 1970 something. Set up their computer department. And so when I finished that, I became the financial controller. So it's just all these things were just coming together to sort of create a kind of a foundation of an individual that had this spread of knowledge. And so when it was time to set up Phillips Consulting, and then don't forget also that I ended up working with Coopers & Lybrand in the UK. And that's a consulting firm, obviously. And we did all kinds of stuff, Again, looking at the functional things we did, in those days, we used to specify IT systems, we used to look at procedures, we could look at even aspects of HR issues. Then after a while, they said, Foluso, they call me Foley. Hey, Foley, you teasing me. You're an African guy. We're going to send you an African assignment. So guess what? I was into Ghana and out, into Nigeria, UAC and out, into Tanzania and out, into Kenya and out. Not South Africa in those days, but one was going back and forth. So you look at it all. So when you end up setting up a Phillips Consulting, you look back and you say, look, from a functional point of view, where I've been, and I said that, okay, Phillips, we need to be a Pan-African company because I've worked at a Pan-African level. So all those things influenced the kind of things that we did. Now, when we now look at our people, I realized very, very quickly that the bulk of the work I was doing at a point was going and marketing and selling. And, when you begin to get quite successful, you can't spread yourself out and be doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 assignments. You learn very quickly that you've got to get people to do this. And like I said, this Peter Senge book got me really thinking about creating a learning organization. And so, like I said, we really invested a lot in books. In those days, I had a huge library, and the whole process when you join the firm, there's a process you've got to go through. There's some basic things you've got to learn. There's some tools you've got to use. And a certain professor from Wits University in South Africa, he had an impact. He called us together one day because he'd come for a program, and he said, if anything should happen to FOP, what's going to happen to this organization? He said, put it this way, if I want to sell this firm, what am I going to sell? Because if I sell this firm and, you give, or I buy this firm from you guys, and then on Monday morning, all of you walk out, what have I got? Is it the furniture? Is it the fancy paintings on the wall? Or what? What are you selling? And that raised the issue about building institutions. And when he left, I went on a massive program of saying, how can we institutionalize the firm? So that when you buy the firm, what should happen is that consultants can come and go. The way we work is what we sell. Okay, and that's so important. So we spend a lot of time, procedures and manuals, how-to books, how do you do surveys, how do you do this, how do you do that? And we had all those things as manuals. So that when consultants, when they say they're going, say, okay, bye-bye. Hi there, Rose. Nice to meet you. Please become an expert, read the manuals. And today, all those things are a lot easier because they're all digitized. But that's the way we were passing on knowledge, whether it became irrelevant who was here. It was like, do we have the body of knowledge that we can retain? Now it's available on the internet, AI and stuff like that. But it's the discipline that you begin to look at. And then begin to look at the character of people. Always recruit behavior, not competence. Not only competence, behavior. Because it's a character that wraps itself around your competence, that defines the quality of your competence. Because you can be so good at something, but bad behavior can just ruin it. You know, and these things are so important that they begin to help. So when we interviewed people in those days, you could never join the firm on, no matter how senior you are or how junior you are, you talk to literally everybody. You know, it was a boring process. You just go from one desk to another. Hi, how are you? What have you done? And by the time you finish that process, you have an idea of what the firm is about. Then the firm also has an idea of what this guy is coming in. And I always say, look, we've got to protect the door into our firm. If you don't have the character, I honestly don't care about your competence. We can teach you. In fact, you probably don't know what it is you're going to do from a work point of view. It's when you come in that you do my famous manuals that you learn. But what's your attitude? Who are you? And that's just helped to sustain. And when you don't maintain that over time, and we've wavered over time, depending on who is in charge and who's coming in. And as you go higher and you get more layers of managers and leaders and supervisors, they all have different attitudes and different ways, and you begin to challenge that. But that's really the theme. So I hope that has answered your question.
Fantastic. It's incredible. You said higher character.
Yeah.
Not competence.
Not competence, high
because
behavior.
competence can be taught, it can be learned.
It can be learned.
When there is a solid character for that competence to sit on.
And let me just interrupt you. What was one of the things that's very important? Because when you say behavior, how do you know about somebody's behavior? We also got a tool, you know, we call it Thomas tool that we've used, and we sort of believed in it so much in the sense that it actually helps, you know, it's like a psychometric type of thing. But it does help to identify the kind of your behavioral traits, okay? You know, it doesn't tell whether you steal or not, anything like that, but just your behavioral traits. And, you know, without going to, you can be a dynamic person or a very communicative person, a very concise person, a very precise person. And those are very, very strong traits that you can have. But those things come to play when you create a team of people. I need somebody to go and help me to set up a branch. Remember working with me. So if you're going to do that, who's the project manager? Get the guy who's all the time. But I need somebody to go to the branch because the branch is settled. So you get your quality person, your procedures person, because you want to maintain that. So behavior counts as well. You got to understand people's character and behavior. So when you look at these things at the beginning, you can say very easily that this is the kind of person we want to pull in. This is the kind of people that we need.
This leads to my next question, which is the fact that let's throw forward to the current dispensation a little bit. I hear a lot of people in my generation talk about the fact that selling services in Nigeria is hard. You don't have a product that somebody can, you know, it's not tangible. And you've said so many things that, you know, touches or pokes that question a little bit. Is you've taken a service sector and you've changed the entire trajectory of how you deliver those services. How are you able to make people see value in something that they cannot touch? Because that's the typical question of an entrepreneur who is in the services sector. We have challenges. I hear a lot of people talk about the fact that they always have issues because they're trying to, you know, overprice. Did you face any of those challenges at a point, or did you?
And I discovered very, very quickly. Somebody have asked me before about if there's one thing that that was so pronounced in the life of the firm, or certainly in our getting up and going. I said perception, managing perception, and it's something that you mustn't play with. And there's a term that I use. I called it tangification, to make things tangible. And we started off in our tangification process by setting up an office, which at that time, nearly went broke or bankrupt in the process. But an office that you walked in and you say, in fact, it's so funny, again, talking about Fola Adeola, I really can't, Fola came to talk to us in the office once. He talked, we had people who were coming in, and Fola Adeola walked in, and then when he was addressing us, he said, when I walked into reception, I said to myself, anybody coming for a consulting, trying to engage these consultants, you've got one or two choices. You can either look around, walk out and say, I can't afford these guys, or say, yeah, these are the kind of people that I need because of the physical. We did set it up. It was a very, very nice office. But then again, we said that all our reports have got to be world class. Okay, the engagement with us has got to be world class. The service we provide, that's what the world class, and consultants you have a good at each other. Is that world class? So you're tangifying, the content of a report by making the report look nice, and you're saying to the client that if I can go through this whole process of providing something that's actually beautiful, then begin to think a bit more about what it is you can deliver. And this is the true story. Again, we had a breakfast meeting many years ago. It was at the Muzon. And the head of, at that time, the managing director of Now Merchant Bank, which is, all these banks are dead now. And he came, and I was so amazed and so impressed to see him because I was there making my opening speech, etc. And after about 10, 15 minutes, he got up and he walked away. And I thought, oh my goodness, the guy who was sort of the prime client, he sort of walked out. And I was a bit worried, we carried on. But later on in the day, he called. I said, Foluso, I came there. I said, yeah, I noticed you walked away. He said, no, I'd seen what I wanted to see. He said, please, can you come and see me? And what did we do? We went around to see him that same day. And he said, I walked in there and I just looked around. I just looked at what you guys had set up. It was a breakfast meeting. We're all going to have breakfast, give your presentations and talk your grammar. He said, but the little things. And he said, you won't believe what convinced me. He said, when I sat down at the table, you didn't have paper napkins. You had starch brocade napkins. That was my caterer. But, as far as he was concerned, he said, yeah, this is the kind of quality I want. Because he was going to engage us on a quality management system for the bank. So I'm saying that to a great extent, you have to try and see how you can tangify and create the feeling that what I will give you is of quality. And the last thing I'll say about this, and this is something I joke about, is somebody sort of half teased me and said, Mr. Phillips, there you are, with your bow tie and this and that, and trying to look affluent and whatever. And I said, it's very easy. There's no way I can come to you and tell you that I want to make you successful and I look like I need help as well. True. And it's so important. So you look at the guy who's talking to you, say, oh, he looks successful. He looks pretty good. So if he's going to guide me into becoming successful, he certainly must know about it. It's like the guy who says, I can make you win £1 million with the pools, and his shirt is torn and he said, go win the pools yourself first. And then come to me and say, you know how to do it. So that's just to deal with it. And it's serious because you might sort of say to yourself, well, what has that got to do with the fact that I'm selling an intangible service? It's the perception you create, the kind of confidence you give people about that. I believe that you can do it. Okay, it's intangible. I don't know how else, but certainly from what I see and feel, I'll give you an opportunity, and that has worked tremendously for us over the years.
Incredible! Thank you so much. You've clarified, because it's not just about being good at what you do, but you must be seen. You must be perceived to be very good at what you do. It's both sides of the coin, and thank you. That's incredible. You talk about the African Renaissance a lot. I'm quite curious as to that and what it means to you, being Nigerian, being able to build a Pan-African entity, something that's gone global right now. Share with us a little bit about that. What's that about for someone, just hearing that for the first time?
Yes, I think that was, my travels in South Africa. And in the process, we used to have, I joined up with a guy who had this magazine, Finance Africa. That's the name of the magazine, Finance Africa. And he did very well. The guy's late now. And we used to have this Finance Africa conference every year. And it became very, very successful, where we get, and don't forget, not not much was going on across Africa in terms of getting people to come to a particular location. I think it was South Africa that helped to make it happen, because South Africa is such a wonderful place for conferences and stuff. And people were very interested in going into South Africa because it was a new country that had opened itself up to the rest of Africa. And I got involved in a lot of this. And in the process of standing up and giving talks about leadership, giving talks about, then South Africa itself was going through its own changes. There's this NEPAD, new something for African development, then stuff with the African Union. So it was more of all these conferences, more of getting people to come together, more of getting Africans to come in and begin to see what's going on in different parts of the world. I had a conference once in which, for some reason, one of the speakers was very rude about Nigeria, because as usual, Nigerians, we stormed the event. Okay, you look around, there's maybe 200-300 people there, and about 200 of them are like Nigerians. And he was being funny, and he thought he was being funny and sarcastic. And he was talking about Nigerians, and he said, he was rude. So I got up and I said that the gentleman that just spoke, I said, I want to apologize to all of you, okay, based on what he has said. I said, I want to apologize to South Africans, all the effort we made to get you guys freed. I want to apologize to you about the amount of money that our parents had to give up from their contribution to try and fund a lot of you. I want to apologize for having Thabo Mbeki live in Sulere and supported by people. I want to apologize for all the university places we granted. And I went on telling all the positive things that we had done. The guy got up and said, I want to apologize to you, Mr. Phillips. So so it was a case of Africa opening up and Nigeria opening up, because we used to go everywhere, and just getting to be a lot more aware of what is going on in the continent. So the African Renaissance for me was just a reawakening by Africans generally about the things that they need to do. Today, things are going on with all these things in Niger and the coups and all those negative things about stuff going on against Africans. You find out that that Renaissance was important, and we need to sustain it. It goes up and down. The African Union is not doing enough, but that's a different story for another day. But that's the background to that. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. The fact that, we live in a generation that really has to start thinking for the future, because as much as we try, we can't keep putting ourselves down. And I think it's something that it's incredible. That's such a leadership example, when everybody is tilting and saying the bad, we look at the good things and then we emphasize on it. We must keep branding ourselves and stating that as a nation, as a people, we are telling our stories in the best possible light. We are not looking down on ourselves. And that's such a learning point for me. Thank you for that incredible example. I definitely would have stood up and said, yes, that's thank you so much. You sit as a chairman, as a board of so many companies, and it's more or less, you are the father multitasking in a manner of speaking. How do they relate with each other? In terms of corporate governance, you are able to oversee, the efficient running of different, in banks, in financial organizations. You are sitting on the board of flour mills, a lot of interesting positions that you occupy. How do these positions interrelate with one another? And has there been any challenge? How have you been able to navigate that? And in terms of even your mentoring endeavors as well, because these positions have some level of mentorship attached to them in one way or the other. How do they interrelate?
Yeah, I think interesting question. You find that today when you sit on huge boards, Flour Mills has about 25 subsidiaries, huge organization, and you come to realize very quickly that you're depending on what the managers, what the executives are doing, and yours is just about governance. You're not there every day doing all the mundane things. Yours is just to look at really the top line and look at the philosophy to a certain extent, keep an eye on some key indicators, make sure you're always exposed, because when they misbehave, it's not about them, it's about the board, and make sure that there are things that you're watching to protect the company, protect yourself as well. So the executive team is what you want to pay attention to. with the banks, like for example, I chair Standard Chartered Bank. Unfortunately, it's a bank that's got very, very tight risk management. Most of the banks do. So to a great extent, you as a board, you know that you're sort of covered. And, the regulator is very stiff. The central bank and NDIC and all those guys, they're there on their backs every time and really making sure that they behave. But for me, it's the global approach that you have. It's looking at things and talking about strategy at 45,000 feet. So it's not as strenuous as you think. A lot of board papers to read and stuff like that, but that's just for you to ensure that everybody's behaving themselves. But it's not as tough as you think. In fact, it's almost like a recognition of where you've been, what you've done, and the reliance and comfort that other people feel, knowing that people like you are on the board. So you're good. And some people are very strict. There's some boards that I would say, I'm sorry, I'm not interested because of the people that are there, and I'm saying that I'm not sure I want to be, with them.
Back to the thing about perception.
Mm-hmm.
Such a critical factor for you. Thank you so much. Sitting as a consultant and to the entrepreneur listening to this conversation, I just have a question which I'm pretty sure everyone will have in their hearts is, what makes businesses work? What makes businesses work? With the wealth of experience you've had, looking at the experiences as well, the problems you've encountered, the solutions you've provided, what would you say makes businesses work?
Passion for a start. And I say passion in terms of who's driving the business. You have some businesses that are failing, in quotes. Just depends on your definition of failure. And yet you find the person who is driving it is still very, very passionate about what he's doing. There is no silver bullet of saying that, all the things. I can begin to lecture you on strategy, I can begin to lecture you on systems, lecture you on people, etc. But you really can't say. Mine is be passionate. Who is leading? Is the person who leads, is he walking the talk? Is he somebody that you can relate to? Are we working hard? Are we building institutions? Are we looking at processes and procedures? Are we getting our people to be aligned? Do they understand what it is they have to do? Do they like the job? Are they suited for the work? Is their character, the right one for what you do? Do they have the knowledge? And things of that nature. I think they're very, very broad, to begin to find one
That's a
answer.
heavy question.
Yes, it's a bit difficult, it's a bit difficult. But having said all that, I think I want to turn on you. You've been giving me a hard time and making me sweat here. But, before we started this program, when we were chatting, I'd read your resume and I was sort of thinking of, okay, what kind of conversation can I have with you? And by the way, your resume doesn't do you justice based on what it is that I've discovered. You talk a lot about you being a lawyer and the kind of things you do in the legal field. But what I find intriguing is this kind of mentoring I see you doing in the tech space. Okay? So tell me a bit about that, very briefly.
Wow, incredible. Thank you so much. So my journey into tech started from the fact that I wanted to make a difference. Yes, as lawyers, we're seen to be very traditional and archaic, but summary was I co-founded a legal tech company with a friend, and unfortunately he passed on in 6 months barely after, and that left on me the responsibility and the passion that's triggered for growth. And I found myself doing a lot of education. I talked about building businesses, because not only was I teaching from a theoretical perspective, but I was experiencing the art of even building something also. And I was able to get into the world of technology. I started to develop myself, do a lot of reading, studying a lot, just learning about the nuances and how tech companies are built, read a lot of biographies, learned a lot, because like you said, digital, information is everywhere. And I fell in love with corporate governance. Because one of the reasons I realized a lot of businesses failed was because there really was no institution, as you rightly said. You're not thinking beyond just let me raise my first fund. Let me go to market. Let me have my most minimum viable product and launch, scale. Nobody understands that to scale, there must be something on which that scaling happens. So that was that foundation. And so I fell in love with that process, learning about risk management, everything that has to do that. The part that the founder may not necessarily be interested in, I fell in love with that part. Yeah. So I would always talk about it. I would write about it on LinkedIn. I organized events about it. For the past 6 months of this year, I was able to, so far so good, about 12 to 11 live events, live sessions, just talking about corporate governance and talking about a lot of things that business owners have to do. And I got a lot of requests. Oh, I enjoy listening to you. Please, can you talk to us? Some come in the capacity of, I'm a founder, I need guidance. Some come in, I want to learn. And I was able to do that. I had a couple of mentorship boot camps for people who were trying to grow in that aspect. It's just been a passionate and learning journey for me. I'm still learning, nowhere close to where you are yet, but it's been incredible just going through that experience and, transferring that passion. I think that's that thing that just keeps you awake and you're like, I can do this for hours and I cannot get tired about it, That thing, it's just, you just understand, you stand in front of a place and you're just talking about how it's important to think legacy.
Yeah, passion what it is. Sleeping 3 hours a day and feeling energetic when you wake up.
Exactly.
Okay. And talking about that and picking up on that, and the mentorship and mentoring is something that a lot of people come to me and say, I want you to be my mentor, I want you to be my mentor. But in your own experience, how best can one truly mentor? And this is a question I'm asking because I get inundated with, Mr. Phillips, I want you to be my mentor. I say, yeah, fine, but what do I do? So what would your generation require in terms of mentoring?
Honestly, it's such an incredible question because I recently became there's a program Google does. They train women tech makers for the Google Black Founders Fund. And I became recently appointed as a mentor under this year's cohort. And it was literally a teaching about what does mentorship actually entail. And I learned 2 things is, number 1, the goal of a mentor is not to transform the mentee to become like them. It's to transform them to become the better version of themselves. So you're helping them carve a path. You may ideate with them, you may brainstorm with them, but your job is not to convert them to you. It's to make them see that there is a new level of themselves. So guiding them in that path. So I think the greatest, to answer that question directly, is what we would need from your generation definitely is just that guidance. These were mistakes we made. You don't have to. You don't necessarily have to. The feedback I even got for myself is try not to be too directive. I don't know what that means, right? Don't say do A, do B, do B. Understand the context. And then let them see the reason why it's important for them to go that route without necessarily forcing it. Because mentorship is more as I do, you follow. Not just as I instruct. It may be a combination of both, but understanding that. So I think our generation really needs a lot of modeling, and beyond the modeling, the mentorship in terms of, I've walked this path. These were the mistakes I made. This is why I made those mistakes. We don't get to hear a lot of failure stories. We hear a lot of success stories. We don't hear a lot of struggle. Yes, and exactly. Sometimes we feel lost because you're like, these guys have never made mistakes in their lives before. Where do I start? So I have a small challenge. I'm already running up and down. But when I'm able to relate with the struggle of someone I'm looking up to, it makes me know that there's hope. And sure. I think that's the best example that a mentor can give to his mate.
Yeah, I think it's just brilliant just knowing that, you people like you do mentoring and it's not all these like us that are supposed to do it. So yeah, that's fine.
Thank you so much. So once again, I want to say thank you for tuning in. We've come to the end of this episode of the Journeys in Entrepreneurship by K Foundation. Please look out for replays of this session. I'm excited and thank you so much, Mr. Phillips, for being here. It's such an incredible honor and privilege having you.
Believe me, I learned a lot from you too. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you for watching this episode of Journeys in Entrepreneurship. This interview was recorded on the 8th of September 2023 at Faith Foundation's office in Lagos. We look forward to hearing about your aha moments in the comment section below. And watch out for the next episode.